Listen carefully, because what I'm about to say might make you uncomfortable. Most of what you believe about success and the way life works is wrong. Not a little wrong, completely wrong. My name is Victor Hale, and I'm 77 years old. It took me 56 years of living to finally understand something important. A truth that could have saved me decades of running in the wrong direction. For most of my life, I thought I understood how the world worked. I believed that if you worked hard enough, everything would eventually make sense. Achieve enough, prove yourself enough times, and you would finally arrive somewhere stable, somewhere meaningful, somewhere that felt like the finish line. I thought life would finally slow down once I reached that point. I thought everything would finally start making sense. But something happened when I was 56 years old that shattered that illusion in a single afternoon. And what I discovered after that day changed the way I see time, success, relationships, and even death itself. I'm not telling you this story because I want to sound wise. At my age, impressing people doesn't mean much anymore. I'm telling you because time is a strange thing. When you're young, it feels endless. But when you reach the stage of life I'm in now, you start to see very clearly how quickly it disappears. And there are things I wish someone had told me when I was younger. When I was 56, I was sitting in a conference room arguing about numbers that no one remembers today. Quarterly reports, market projections, the kind of conversation that feels incredibly important when you're in the middle of it. I remember leaning forward to make a point when suddenly the room tilted, not dramatically at first, just a strange dizziness, like the ground had shifted slightly under my feet. Then everything started spinning. The next clear moment I remember was opening my eyes in a hospital room, machines humming quietly, a dull ache in my chest. My wife sitting beside the bed with tears on her face, she was trying very hard to hide. A doctor stood near the foot of the bed and said something I'll never forget. "You're lucky." Lucky. That word stayed with me. Apparently, my heart had decided it had enough of the life I was living. A cardiac event, they called it. A polite medical phrase that really means your body almost shut down. They told me if things had gone slightly differently, I might not have made it to the hospital at all. Lying there with tubes in my arms and a ceiling above me I'd never seen before, I had nothing to do but think. And for the first time in decades, the noise of my life was completely silent. No meetings, no deadlines, no urgent phone calls, just me and a very uncomfortable question. If I had died that day, what exactly would my life have meant? I had spent 30 years building what most people would call a successful life, a respected position in my company, a comfortable house, a retirement account that looked impressive on paper. But when I imagined disappearing right there in that hospital room, I realized something unsettling. Most of the things I had spent my life chasing would disappear almost immediately. The projects would be reassigned, someone else would take my office. Within a few years, my name would slowly fade from the places where I once felt important, and the realization hit me harder than the pain in my chest. I had been living on autopilot. Every day I woke up, worked hard, checked the next box, reached the next milestone, and told myself that eventually all of it would lead to something meaningful. But meaningful to who? That question haunted me because the answer wasn't very comforting. You see, there's a quiet lie most of us carry around when we're younger. We tell ourselves we have time to travel later, time to repair relationships later, time to pursue the things that actually make us feel alive later. I told myself that lie for decades. I saw people in their 20s and 30s doing exactly what I once did, saying the same sentences I used to say when things calm down, when I make a little more money, when this busy season ends. The problem is that life has a strange habit. The finish line keeps moving. You get the promotion, and suddenly the next promotion becomes the new goal. You earn more money, and suddenly the lifestyle expands to match it. You climb higher and higher, thinking the view at the top will finally bring peace. But when you arrive, you realize the ladder was leaning against the wrong wall. I spent 30 years climbing that ladder, and when I finally looked around, I realized I had missed entire pieces of my own life along the way. Late evenings at the office while my children were growing up, conversations I postponed because I was tired, trips I said we'd take next year. There's a particular memory that still visits me sometimes. A Sunday afternoon many years ago, my daughter was young, maybe 9 or 10. She asked if I could come outside and watch her ride her bike down the street. I remember telling her I'd come in a few minutes. I just needed to finish something for work. I never went outside, not because I didn't love her, because I thought those small moments would always be available later. That's the mistake. Later is a promise life never actually makes. A close friend of mine passed away a few years ago at 68. Brilliant man. Built a successful company from nothing. Worked harder than anyone I knew. He used to joke that he'd relax after one more big deal. Then another, then another. He never got around to relaxing. A stroke ended his story in a matter of hours. At the funeral, his son stood up and said something that stayed with me. My father accomplished incredible things, but I wish I'd known him better. That sentence tells you everything you need to know about chasing the wrong things, because when people reach the end of their lives, the regrets are almost never about the deals that didn't close or the promotions that took too long. The regrets come from something much quieter: the trip you kept postponing, the apology you never made, the phone calls you didn't return, the people you assumed would always be there. My own father passed away when I was in my 40s. We had a complicated relationship like many fathers and sons do. There were conversations we kept postponing, important ones. But I was busy building a life I thought would eventually make him proud. One day, the phone rang, and I learned he was gone. Just like that. No final conversation, no chance to say the things we both probably needed to say. You never get those moments back. After my heart incident at 56, I began changing the way I lived. Not all at once. Change rarely works like that, but slowly. I started saying no to things that once felt mandatory. I began making time for people instead of squeezing them into the leftovers of my schedule. I took trips I had postponed for decades. I forgave people I had quietly resented. Most importantly, I stopped trying to prove my life was impressive. Because the strange truth I finally learned after 56 years is this: the world is not watching you nearly as closely as you think. Most people are too busy worrying about their own lives. All that pressure we feel to prove something often exists only inside our own heads. The people who truly matter in your life don't need to be impressed by you. They just want your time, your presence, your attention. I'm 77 now. When I wake up in the morning, I understand something I didn't grasp when I was young. Time is the only real currency we ever had. Everything else can be replaced. Money returns, careers restart, possessions can be bought again, but time moves in one direction, always forward, never back. If I could sit across from my 30-year-old self today, I wouldn't lecture him about success or failure. I'd simply tell him this: stop trying to impress people who aren't paying attention. Stop postponing the things that make life meaningful. Call your parents more often. Take the trip while you still have the energy. Tell the people you love how you feel while they can still hear it. And most importantly, stop waiting for the perfect moment to start living your life, because the perfect moment never arrives. Life will always be messy, busy, and full of reasons to delay happiness. But one day you'll wake up, like I did, and realize decades slipped by while you were preparing to live. It took me 56 years to understand that. You don't have to spend that long learning the same lesson. The clock is already moving. The real question is what you're going to do with the time you still have.